I sat alone in my apartment, the lights dim but warm. It was my first Christmas alone. I had just moved to this city a few weeks prior, and my heart felt heavy with thoughts of my recent breakup. I wanted to celebrate, but it felt strange. I hung some decorations that afternoon, a small tree in the corner, a string of lights framing the window. It looked nice. As I worked, I heard faint caroling above me. I thought that unit had been empty since I moved in. I paused and strained to hear the words. It sounded festive yet eerie. I shook my head, convinced it was just my imagination, and finished decorating. That night, as I lay in bed, the caroling echoed in my mind. It was charming at first, but soon it kept me awake. The next day was more unsettling. I could hear soft footsteps from above, moving back and forth in a rhythmic pattern. I was startled. Was someone really up there? I considered investigating, but my courage faltered. Maybe it was nothing. My neighbors were likely busy with their families. I hadn't seen anyone since I moved in. I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks. But then I thought I saw shadows flickering past my window. I felt a chill grip my stomach, tightening with each moment. I peered outside, but the hallway was empty. My heart sank. I called my landlord to ask about the unit above me. He told me it had been vacant for years. I felt a shiver down my spine. There shouldn't have been anyone celebrating above me. My curiosity got the better of me, so I knocked on my neighbors' doors one by one. No one answered. Everyone really was away, just as I had thought. As the days dragged on, I felt more alone. The caroling grew louder each night, the footsteps never fading. Was I losing my mind? I kept convincing myself it was nothing, but the fear lingered in my gut. Then came Christmas night. I was on edge, the caroling louder than ever. I sat frozen on my couch, my hands shaking. I felt I had to confront whatever or whoever was above me. I climbed the creaky staircase, each step echoing my racing heart. When I reached the door of the vacant unit, I hesitated. The voices sang cheerfully, their tones full of joy. I took a deep breath and knocked on the door. For a moment there was silence. Then a heavy stillness settled in the air. I wasn't alone. Suddenly, I felt a shift behind me. I slowly turned around, my heart pounding in my chest. To my panic, there was no one there, just silence. I stood frozen, the laughter from above still ringing in my ears. I wanted to scream, but no sound came out. I was not sure if I was dreaming or if the unseen was somehow real. The unsettling feeling gripped me tighter than ever. I stood motionless outside the vacant unit, my heart racing. The laughter above was so inviting yet so wrong. I felt a mix of dread and curiosity pulling at me, urging me to uncover the truth. I knocked again, louder this time, but the only answer was the echo of my own heartbeat. My fingers tingled, hovering near the doorknob, but I couldn't bring myself to touch it. Then something shifted in the air, a faint whisper behind me. I spun around, half expecting to see someone standing there, but the hallway remained still. Just the remnants of that haunting caroling floated in the air, mingling with my rising fear. I closed my eyes, taking a step back from the door. Who would be in there? Why was I hearing all this? Questions swirled in my mind. I wanted to turn and run, but part of me needed to know. Gathering my breath, I forced myself to look back at the door. Against my better judgment, I pressed my ear to the wood. The laughter was muffled, but I could hear snippets of conversation, joyful, familiar, yet completely foreign. It sounded like a gathering, like a family celebrating. But whose family? Anger bubbled up. That was when I noticed something strange. There was a faint glow seeping through the cracks around the door. My heart dropped. Light usually meant life, yet this felt eerie. I stepped back, trying to reason with myself. It was just a vacant unit, wasn't it? Then, the whispers grew clearer. "Come join us," they called softly, as if knowing I was out there. I stumbled backwards, hitting the wall of the hallway. The voice sent chills trickling down my spine. My instinct screamed at me to leave, to run, but another part of me was drawn in. I turned to head back downstairs when I noticed a figure standing at the end of the hallway. My heart raced again. Was it a neighbor, or something worse? The figure shimmered in the light, almost like a mirage, and they appeared to be dressed in vintage holiday clothing, something straight out of an old Christmas postcard. I blinked, but the figure didn't vanish. "Help me," it whispered, the words trailing off like smoke. A deep chill washed over me, freezing my feet in place. I couldn't move. Should I approach? I considered calling for help, but my voice felt caught in my throat. Then, just like that, the figure vanished. Panic surged within me, and I turned to run. I dashed down the stairs, the laughter from above now a cacophony, blending with the pounding of my heart. As I reached my apartment, I slammed the door shut behind me, locking it tightly. I leaned against the door, gasping for breath. What had just happened? The realization settled like a weight on my chest. I was not alone. Someone needed help. But who and why? Battling my racing thoughts, I meandered back to the couch, my mind a whirlwind of fear and confusion. The night felt heavier than before. I had to know what was happening above me. I grabbed my phone to call someone, anyone, when the lights in my apartment flickered. I flipped the switch, and they danced chaotically before plunging me into darkness. "Not again," I whispered, clutching my phone like a lifeline. This Christmas was rising to a level of terror I hadn't imagined, and I had a feeling it wouldn't end there. Something was happening, and I was about to discover more than just the secrets of an empty unit. I sat in the dark, clutching my phone. With every flicker of the lights, a sense of dread crawled up my spine. I took a deep breath and decided I couldn't stay locked away any longer. I needed to know if the creature from the hallway was gone. I had to face the unknown. I stood, heart pounding in my ears. The soft glow from my phone illuminated just enough of the room for me to navigate the space. I crept toward the door, my hand trembling as I reached for the knob. I held my breath, bracing myself, expecting the door to swing open dramatically. But when I cracked it open an inch, I barely heard anything. Just silence. The laughter and whispers from before seemed to fade like a dream. I peered into the corridor, half aware that I might be making a huge mistake. Nothing. No figure. No flickering light. Just shadows dancing in the faint hallway glow. I took a cautious step forward, heart racing anew. With each step, I felt like I was entering a forgotten realm. My phone buzzed in my pocket, making me jump. I fished it out, quickly glancing at the screen. A text message from my neighbor flashed brightly. "Are you okay? I heard strange noises. Please stay inside." My stomach twisted at the timing. It was like she knew about my encounter before it had even happened. I decided to respond, though my fingers shook as I typed. "No, something is wrong." I heard laughter and saw a figure. My thumb hovered over the send button. Maybe I shouldn't have shared that. Just as I hit send, something flickered in front of me. I looked up to see a shadow at the end of the hallway again, one that wasn't there before. It stood against the light, casting an elongated silhouette. My throat went dry as I realized this wasn't just a trick of the light. This was a person, or at least the shape of one. "Help me," the voice whispered, not from the figure but from somewhere deep in the back of my mind. I felt a pull, a nagging urge to reach out. But I couldn't move. All I could do was watch as the figure inched closer, as if drawn to me. "Stop!" I shouted, the word exploding from my lips. To my surprise, the figure halted. It was unreal, like a scene from a horror movie. The energy in the hallway shifted, crackling like static electricity. But before I could gather my thoughts, the figure vanished once more. It left behind a bitter cold that seeped through my skin. My breath fogged in front of me, and I instinctively stepped back, retreating toward the safety of my apartment. As I slammed the door again, I felt a sense of urgency rise within me. I couldn't let this go. Whatever was happening, whatever was trying to communicate with me, I needed to uncover the truth. Something told me that this wasn't just about the vacant unit. Just as I steadied myself, the lights flickered back on. I felt a rush of relief, but then I noticed something unexpected on the floor. A small vintage ornament shaped like a star, gleaming under the light. It had a familiar aura, almost as if it belonged to the family that had been celebrating behind the door. My breath hitched. That's when I realized it wasn't just any ornament. It was one I had seen in an old family photo from the community center's archives. A photo of the very family whose voices I heard moments ago. Questions flooded my mind. Who were they? What did they want from me? I picked up the ornament, staring at it intently. As I did, I could hear the distant echoes of the laughter starting all over again. And that was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up to a bright sun filtering through my curtains. For a moment, I tried to shake off the lingering fear from the night before. Maybe it was just a bad dream, I told myself. But as I glanced at the ornament on my nightstand, the memories came rushing back. I decided I needed to visit the community center. Maybe I could find more about the family, the connection to the ornament. I felt a pull, a sense of urgency I couldn't ignore. After a quick breakfast, I grabbed my coat and the ornament, slipping it into my pocket just in case it held some importance I didn't yet understand. The walk to the community center felt different. The world outside was bright and festive, completely at odds with my thoughts. People bustled about, hanging wreaths and stringing lights, completely unaware of the tension that twisted in my gut. When I arrived, I found the archives room. A small, dimly lit area filled with old books and photographs. A friendly volunteer greeted me, her smile slightly faltering when she noticed my somber expression. "Looking for something specific?" she asked. "Actually, yes. I'm interested in a family that used to live here. The names might be on file," I said, trying to keep my demeanor calm. "I found something that might belong to them." "Oh, we have quite a few records," she replied, gesturing toward the stacks. "Go ahead and let me know if you find anything unusual." I spent the next hour sifting through old files and photos. My heart raced every time I found something resembling what I had seen. But I didn't have much luck until I stumbled across an old newspaper clipping. It detailed a tragic incident in the neighborhood from long ago. A family who had suffered a devastating loss during a winter holiday celebration. Their laughter, it seemed, had ended too abruptly. As I read the article, a voice flooded my mind, the same one I had encountered in the hallway. "Help me." The chilling whisper twisted through my thoughts. I felt the weight of the past pressing down on me like it wanted to spill into the present. "Everything okay?" The volunteer's voice broke through my concentration. "Yeah, just surprised by the stories I'm finding," I murmured, clutching the ornament in my pocket. I couldn't shake the feeling that the family was still lingering in some way. Then I caught sight of a name. Mary Ann. It struck me like a bolt of lightning. That was one of the names I had heard in the laughter. I quickly took a photo of the clipping with my phone and scribbled down the date. As I headed out, the sense of urgency turned toward anxiety again. Who was Mary Ann really? Why had she called out to me? What did she want? My mind raced as I walked back home, determined to find answers. But when I reached my building, the air felt different. The normal bustle of life seemed muted, as though the world around me had dimmed. And then it happened. The power cut out, plunging me into darkness. A flicker, then silence. Gripping my phone tightly, I found myself engulfed by the same unsettling sensation I thought I'd left behind. I quickly turned on the flashlight and headed for my apartment, but that's when I noticed it. A shadow at the end of the hallway, a familiar form shifting back into view. And in that moment, I realized, whatever was happening, it was far from over. The shadow loomed nearer, an eerie silhouette flickering under the faint beam of my flashlight. I could see mist swirling at its edges, giving it an unsettling, ghostly quality. My heart raced, and I felt a tight knot in my throat. Was it Mary Ann, or was it something worse? "Hello?" I called out, my voice wavering. I hated the tremor I could hear in it. Silence hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The shadow didn't respond. Instead, it shifted slightly to the left, as if it were surveying me. My instincts screamed at me to run, but my legs felt like stone. Just when I started to back away, the shadow stepped forward, revealing more detail. It was wearing a long, old-fashioned dress, the fabric tattered at the edges. The style looked to be from decades ago, possibly even longer. Panic bubbled in my chest. I realized that I might actually be staring into the face of something unnatural. "Help me." The voice was soft, but it carried the weight of despair. I felt the air around me chill. It was her, Mary Ann. "Why are you here?" I asked, the words escaping before I could stop them. "I need you to find it." "Find what?" I was practically trembling as I pointed my flashlight toward her, but the light flickered and dimmed. The shadows danced more wildly, swallowing her form in darkness. I turned my phone's flashlight up, but it did little to combat the encroaching gloom. "Please." Her voice pierced through my fear, sharp and clear. "The pendant, it holds my story." The pendant? I had the ornament, but was there something more? I seized the moment of clarity and shouted, "What ornament? I don't understand." Suddenly the air grew colder. I couldn't see the shadow any longer, but I felt a rush of wind whip around me, as if the very essence of her presence was pulling away. The lights flickered back on for just a moment, blinding me with light, but just as quickly they plunged into darkness once again. Before I could process what happened, the shadow was gone, leaving me with questions and an overwhelming sense of urgency. My phone finally turned on fully, illuminating the big 12 inch flashing at me, as if the device itself had been as dark as my surroundings. What did she mean by the pendant? Clutching the ornament tightly in my hand, I raced back to my apartment, fueled by a mix of fear and determination. I needed answers. Mary Ann was clearly reaching out for help, and I couldn't turn my back on her. As I reached my door, a sudden crack from behind me froze me in place. I turned slowly, half expecting the ghost to materialize again. But instead, it was a package lying on the floor in front of my neighbor's door. It was unmarked, heavy, and somehow ominous. I felt that familiar knot in my stomach, a warning that whatever that package contained was connected to everything that was happening. Should I open it? I hesitated, weighing the consequences. I couldn't ignore Mary Ann's plea, and I knew I was already entangled in a mystery that was far from resolved. I leaned closer, and the hairs on my arms stood up as I reached for the package. That's when I heard it. A soft whisper behind me. "Don't touch it." My breath hitched, and I whipped around. But nothing was there. I took a step back, my heart pounding in my chest. The phrase lingered in the air, a chilling reminder that I wasn't alone. I glanced around, but the dim hallway was empty. The only sound came from the echo of my own breath. The package still lay at my neighbor's door, a heavy weight pressing on my mind. Was it really just an innocent delivery, or did it hold some connection to the shadow I had just encountered? I needed to know. But the whisper, who said that? My instincts told me to leave it alone, but what if it tied Mary Ann's story together? As I stared at the package, A feeling washed over me. The urge to open it grew stronger, fueled by the desperation to help Mary Ann. The shadows seemed to stretch around me, folding and twisting in the corners of my mind. I had to decide quickly. Trying to shake off the fear, I shifted my focus back to the pendant clutched in my palm. It was an antique, delicate with intricate designs etched into its surface. Maybe I should take it to someone who knows about it. Someone who could tell me why it was significant. I turned to my apartment, but before I could unlock the door, the sudden ring of my phone startled me. I fished it out of my pocket and saw an unknown number lighting up the screen. With a deep breath, I answered, hoping it was something good. "Hello?" I said cautiously. A voice crackled on the other end, low and distorted. "You have something that belongs to me." My blood ran cold. "Who is this?" "Find the pendant. You must uncover the truth before it's too late." The call disconnected just as abruptly as it had come in, leaving me staring at my phone in disbelief. Was this another connection to Mary Ann, or was I in deeper trouble than I realized? I felt the walls closing in around me. I needed to act fast. Thoughts raced through my head, merging my fear with an urgent need for clarity. I had to confront the past, and I had to do it now. With determination, I turned and walked toward the stairs leading down to the complex's lobby. Maybe the old lady at the antique shop would know something about the pendant. Just as I reached the first step, I heard it again. A soft whisper, but this time clearer than before. "Don't go near the package." I froze. The ominous message gnawed at my resolve. Should I confront the package instead, or take my chances with the pendant? Before I could decide, the lights overhead flickered and went out completely, plunging me into darkness. I winced, trying to adjust to the sudden change. As I took another step, I felt a cold breeze sweep past me, a sensation that felt too familiar. Then silence. Everything felt heavy, as if the air were thick with tension. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to happen, something that would change everything. And then it did. That's when I saw it. Glowing on the floor between my feet, a small light pulsing gently like a heartbeat. I bent down to look closer, the darkness around me forgotten, anxiety and curiosity twisting together as I grasped the pendant. The pendant felt warm in my hand, its delicate shape fitting perfectly against my palm. The soft glow pulsed rhythmically, casting a faint light that danced across the walls of my darkened hallway. I couldn't look away. It was as if the pendant was alive, calling out to me to unlock its secrets, but I couldn't ignore the chilling warning still echoing in my mind. In that moment, a sudden crash from down the hall jolted me back to reality. My heart raced again, and the warmth of the pendant suddenly felt cold against my skin. Was someone coming? I stood frozen, listening intently. The silence that followed felt oppressive, every sound amplified in the stillness. Then a soft thud, this time closer. I quickly glanced at the package still resting on my neighbor's doorstep. What if it was connected to this? I debated whether to leave the pendant behind and investigate the noise, but the allure of the pendant was strong. It was the only thing that felt real amidst the chaos surrounding me. I tiptoed toward the sound, the pendant glowing brighter as I moved. With each cautious step, the light seemed to guide me, illuminating the path ahead. The hallway stretched out, curving to the left, where the sound had come from. I reached the corner and peered around. No one was there, just an empty hallway bathed in shadows. Just when I thought about retreating, I heard a whisper again. "You must go back." It was the same voice. A cold shiver ran down my spine. Whether it was a warning or a command, I wasn't sure. Each leg of that journey felt like stepping deeper into a hidden realm. But before I could respond, the package at my neighbor's door caught my eye again, seeming to pulse in time with the pendant. Questions flooded my mind. Who sent it? What did it contain? And why did it capture my attention like this? My instinct was to ignore it, to turn away. But I was compelled to know. I approached it slowly, gaze fixed on the package, the fear of the unknown overshadowing my common sense. I knelt down, heart racing. The pendant in my hand felt hot now, almost burning. I could see a faint swirl of symbols etched along the box, symbols that looked eerily similar to those on the pendant. My breath hitched as a picture started to form. This could mean something. I had to open it. Just as I reached for the package, the air around me shifted. The soft glow of the pendant flickered wildly, and then the lights flickered back on, flooding the hallway with sudden brightness. The shadows danced away. But instead of feeling relieved, I felt a rush of dread. Everything seemed as usual, but I knew something was profoundly off. I pulled my hand back, hesitating, and then I heard footsteps behind me. Panic engulfed me. I whirled around, clutching the pendant tightly, ready to face whatever was approaching. My breath quickened. The familiar cold whisper was gone, replaced by the heavy sound of footsteps getting closer. I had to decide fast. Would I confront the source of the noise, or would I unravel the mystery of the lights and the package? Either choice could be dangerous. Either choice could lead to the truth. And the thrill of it all was intoxicating. I turned back, my instincts warning me that I should run. But I stood rooted in place, gripped by uncertainty. The footsteps echoed down the hall, heavy and deliberate. I could sense the presence of someone or something closing in. With the pendant squeezing tightly in my hand, I didn't know whether its power would protect me or condemn me. The whispers had stopped, but the weight of their meaning lingered. I needed to act. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. Silence responded, but the footsteps continued, slow and methodical. I could feel the heat rising in my chest, a fight-or-flight adrenaline flooding my system. Then I heard a door creak slightly down the hall, my neighbor's door. The shadows clung to the edges of the frame, making it hard to see clearly. Whoever it was, they weren't just wandering. They were searching. I couldn't stay here. I needed a plan. Backing away carefully, I glanced down at the package. The symbols seemed to dance in the light, teasing me with their mystery. I couldn't resist. I needed to know what was inside. Just then, the footsteps stopped. Abrupt silence fell, but I wasn't alone anymore. A figure loomed in the doorway, backlit by the fluorescent glow of the hallway. My breath caught in my throat as recognition crept in. It was my neighbor, but this was no ordinary visit. "Help me," she said, her eyes wide with fear. "They're coming for us." "Who?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She glanced around, panic flickering across her face. "The ones who sent the package," she replied, breathless. I thought it would stay put, but it's too late now." As her words sank in, the pendant in my hand pulsed angrily. I felt its warmth intensify, like it was absorbing the tension surrounding us, but I was too afraid to ask what it all meant. The once enticing idea of unlocking its secrets now felt more like a curse. "Get inside," I urged, nodding toward my apartment. She hesitated, but the fear in her eyes pushed her forward. We ducked inside, and I closed the door behind us, locking it quickly. "What do we do?" she asked, her voice trembling. I didn't have the answers. My mind was racing, pieces of a puzzle I couldn't fit together. But as soon as I glanced back at the glowing pendant, I had a sinking feeling. It was too powerful, and we were in way over our heads. "Maybe we should just—" I started. But before I could finish, a loud bang came from my neighbor's door. It vibrated against the hinges, and I jumped back, heart thumping. The noise continued, pounding harder, as if something or someone was desperate to get in. I froze, staring at my neighbor, who looked just as terrified. "Whatever is in that package, it's connected to this," I said, panic creeping into my voice. Then I reached for it. I had to know, but just as I took a step toward the door, the lights flickered again, plunging us into darkness. That's when I knew we were no longer safe. I could barely see a thing in the sudden darkness. My heart raced as I fumbled my way to the living room. The last thing I wanted was to be caught off guard. I grabbed my phone, hoping the light from the screen would help. With a flick of my thumb, the dim glow illuminated the room. My neighbor was crouched low, eyes darting around in fear. "What do we do?" she repeated, her voice quivering more than before. I glanced back toward the door, where the banging had stopped. The silence felt so unnatural, so charged. I took a breath, trying to be brave. "We need to figure out what's in that package," I decided. It felt like the only option, but dread knotted my stomach. "Are you crazy?" she gasped, glancing again at the door. "Whatever they want, it's because of that. We should hide." But I felt an odd pull towards the package. Something inside me said it might hold answers. Before I could talk myself out of it, I stepped toward the table. I could feel the pendant's heat radiating, as if urging me on. As I reached for the package, I noticed it trembling slightly on the table, like it was responding to my presence. I hesitated, suddenly aware that this wasn't some ordinary delivery. A shiver ran down my spine as I peeled back the tape. "Please don't," my neighbor whispered. She was on the verge of tears, and I wanted to comfort her, but the need for answers overshadowed everything. I finally removed the last piece of tape and opened the box. Inside lay a small wooden box, intricately carved. Symbols similar to those on the pendant adorned its surface. I felt a strange resonance between the two, as if they were connected in ways I couldn't yet understand. "That's it," I muttered, mostly to myself. "It's connected to the pendant." Before I could investigate further, a loud crash startled us both. The front door splintered under an immense weight, and the sound echoed through the room. My pulse quickened. "What is happening?" my neighbor cried, backing away. I barely had time to react before the door cracked open, a figure silhouetted against the faint light from the hallway. "Run!" I shouted, adrenaline surging through me as I shoved the box back into the package. It felt like the only thing I could protect. I grabbed my neighbor's arm, and we sprinted towards the bathroom, a small space that might afford us some cover. Just as we squeezed inside, I noticed the faint glow of the pendant becoming brighter, illuminating the room with an eerie light. It pulsed faster, matching the rapid beats of my heart. I clutched it tighter, unsure if it was a blessing or a curse. Then I heard a voice from the darkness, deep and menacing. "You can't hide from us. We know what you have." My breath hitched as fear consumed me. That voice carried a promise of danger, and I realized whatever was coming was not going to stop until it had what it wanted. "Who are they?" I whispered to my neighbor, panic crawling up my spine. Her wide eyes absorbed the gravity of our situation. "We need to figure that out fast." Just then, another crash rocked the room, and the shadows shifted ominously. The game had changed, and the clock was ticking. The air grew colder in the cramped bathroom as we huddled. My neighbor and I pressed against one another in fear. The voice from the darkness rang in my mind, sending shivers down my spine. "I need to know more," I whispered, grasping the pendant. Its warmth almost comforted me in the encroaching dread. "I don't think we have time for that," my neighbor replied, her voice trembling. "Whatever's in that box." "No," I interrupted. "If we don't figure out what it is, we'll just keep being hunted. We can't run forever." My pulse raced, the weight of the pendant pulling at my consciousness. "We have to trust in this." I steadied myself and turned the pendant over in my palm. It glowed stronger with every second, casting flickers of light against the stark walls. The intricately carved wooden box lay quietly within the larger package, feeling both ominous and alluring at the same time. Its surface shimmered in the faint light, as if waiting for me to unlock its secrets. With a deep breath, I gently set the pendant down, close enough so it cast a soft light over the wooden box. My heart pounded as I reached for the small latch, pushing it open slowly. The lid creaked, moving with an almost sentient quality. Inside, I found a delicate silver chain, glimmering as if it had just been polished, with a small pendant shaped like a star. "That's it," I murmured under my breath, recognizing it immediately as a twin to my ornament. I could see the symbols etched along its edge mirrored those of the box. There was a connection, something meant to be together. Just then, a loud crash echoed from outside, rattling the door with enough force to send a few toiletries rattling from the shelf above us. I jumped and looked at my neighbor, her face pale. "We can't stay here. They'll come through," she urged urgently. "We can't leave either. If I don't understand what this means, they'll keep hunting us," I replied, my voice low but insistent. "I can't let them take it." I grasped the star pendant, and as I lifted it from the box, the light brightened, illuminating the entire bathroom. It felt warm, inviting, almost like a shield against the darkness encroaching on us. The moment we saw the star glow brightly, the voice called out from the shadows again, filled with haunting desperation. "You don't belong. Return it." A sudden rush of panic filled the small space as the door rattled again, louder this time. "What do they want?" my neighbor gasped, clutching my arm. "I think—" My voice wavered. "I think it has to do with the past. Mary Ann, the family, all the laughter we heard. They want this pendant back." "But we can't just go out there," she pleaded, the fear palpable in her voice. "Maybe it's not about fighting them. Maybe it's about understanding," I reasoned. "If I can return it—" "Are you out of your mind?" she interrupted, wild-eyed. "They'll hurt you. They're not just shadows. They want something. You've seen that." But as her words echoed around us, another shadow broke through the doorframe, the silhouette taking on a human form. I felt a cold grip of dread, but then I looked down at the pendant. The warmth surged through me, giving me courage. "Listen," I said, my voice steadier. "If we confront this, maybe we can find peace. I can feel it. There's a connection to the family, to their pain. If they're trapped by this, we have to set them free." Before my neighbor could respond, the door splintered under another blow, leaving a faint crack, dark edges framing the doorway and threatening to spill into our sanctuary. "They may have lost their way in this world," I continued, holding the star pendant in front of me like an offering. "Maybe that's what it all means." I took a step forward, bracing myself against the encroaching darkness. "I'll go first, okay? You can stay here. If things get dangerous, I'll find a way to come back." "Please be careful," she whispered, panic still laced in her voice. I nodded, taking one last look at her, then squeezed my eyes shut for a brief moment to muster my courage. As I emerged slowly into the hallway, the shadows clustered, quaking with anticipation. The figure looming at the end was shrouded in darkness, but transformed as I stepped out further, the pendant glowing even more intensely. The being's features became clearer, a young woman in a long, worn dress, her expression a mix of sorrow and longing. "Return what was taken," the figure whispered, reaching out toward me. I held up the star pendant, the light shimmering in harmony with her presence. "This is yours, isn't it? It holds your story." As I spoke, the air seemed to ripple, drawing heavy tension from the walls. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of recognition in her eyes. "Finally," she said softly, almost relieved. But just then, as if sensing the shift, the shadows behind her writhed and twisted, darkening all around. "No," shouted a forceful voice from the depths of the hallway. "You cannot control what is lost." I stood my ground, holding the pendant tightly. "I'm here to help. You were—" The shadows lunged, swirling violently as I was enveloped in a cloud of darkness. But even as the swell of fear surged through me, I clutched the pendant tighter, feeling its warmth penetrate the cold terror around me. "Believe," I heard Mary Ann's voice mixed with the chaos. "You can do this." Suddenly I understood. With the pendant's light flickering like a beacon, I took a deep breath and shouted, "I offer this, your pendant, your light. Find peace in the warmth of your memories." The dark shadows halted for a moment, lingering in the air as they shifted, wavering like smoke. Above me, the brightness of the star pendant pulsed, illuminating the hallway. A soft wind whooshed past, almost like a sigh of relief, causing the shadows to retreat. The figure of Mary Ann stepped closer, her face softening as she stretched her hand toward me. "Thank you," she breathed, and just like that, the glow of the pendant enveloped her, wrapping her in warmth. But before I could react, the wind picked up again, and I was pulled back, darkness swirling angrily around me. I surrendered to it, trusting in the light I held tightly within my grasp. As I fought the pulling shadows, a blinding flash illuminated everything around me. I felt the weight of the pendant translate into hope that momentarily pierced the darkness. Then everything went blank. I awoke on the floor of my apartment, panting and disoriented. The lights were back on. I scrambled to my feet, heart racing as I glanced around the room, desperate to figure out what had happened. "Are you okay?" my neighbor asked from the kitchen, her voice laced with concern. I looked at her, bewildered. The feeling of fear melted into relief. "What happened? Did I lose consciousness?" "I heard a crash, and when I came in, you were just lying there," she explained, her eyes wide. "You were talking about Mary Ann." I instantly checked my hands. The star pendant still lay warm in my palm, glowing faintly in the light. "They're not gone," I muttered, realization dawning. "I think I helped them find peace, but I also awakened something that wants the pendant." I couldn't shake the feeling that the danger had merely simmered, not extinguished. I looked at my neighbor, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. "We need to figure this out before it catches up with us." But as we rallied ourselves, a chill crept back into the room, sending an indescribable unease through the air. The sound of gentle singing wafted through the apartment, an echo of the laughter we'd once feared, now laced with a bittersweet tone. I glanced at my neighbor, our eyes meeting in a shared understanding. "Maybe some things are never truly settled," I replied quietly, heart still racing with an uncertainty that loomed as my next challenge awaited in the unknown. The air felt thick with questions, shadows lingering just beyond the threshold of understanding. Whatever had happened, whatever was yet to come, I was determined to discover the truth, intertwined with memory, hope, and something far more profound than I could ever have imagined.